My father experience, I think it's similar to a lot of people on the Cape Flats. Mom being a single parent, although my mom and dad got married, I think when I was about 13 years of age. But by that time, the foundations of not having a father wasn't really there. In actual fact, he was an absent father. And I didn't really have role models as fathers growing up. And I think my first father figure was my brother, my big boot Donovan. And that, I think if it wasn't for that, I think I could have been one of the statistics in terms of um, what happens on the Cape Flats on a daily basis. So I grew up in Heidelberg. I call it the center of the universe, by the way. And even in this week, I said that I'm changing the question: what good can come out of Heidelberg to how much more greatness will come out of Heidelberg. And that's just as an aside, but uh, the problem still remains in an area like that on the Cape Flats and other areas as well, where fatherlessness is a big problem, and it causes a knock-on effect, not just for the family, but for the community and society at large. And it is something that we need to address. And going back personally to me, I only found out things about my father after he died, which is for me a very sad thing, is that I would have loved to have known these things while he was alive. And by then I was married, the second child was on its way. And in a way, it's also spurred me on to be a better dad, not to show my dad how it was done, but for the sake of my own boys, my own kids, to show that this is what the benefits is of having a father in the household for their future and for their generations to come. I think that often we look at situations from our own perspective, especially when we're young and we're growing up, and there's certain things that we want to have in place, especially where fathers are concerned. But in hindsight is a perfect science. If I look back at being a father now and the pressures that I'm under to provide, to give identity, to bring security, and the daily needs of my own sons, I think I do understand better with regards to some of the pressures my dad had to go through growing up. And it's amazing when you're in the situation and you have a bit of blinkers on, that you maybe in a way you can be a bit selfish in the way that you want things for yourself. But also I do understand that it is a real thing for a lot of people to struggle with the issue of fatherlessness. And it's a big scourge in our society, and we're in 2019 now. And I would have thought that with all the knowledge, with all the things at our disposal, that it would be better. But in actual fact, it's gone backwards. It's actually worse off than what we were years back when our parents were a lot, or at least their parents were a lot more stable. So for me, it is finding the balance for yourself in how you choose to go forward in terms of how you want to deal with your own offspring, with your own life, and your issues, how you want to deal with it and find closure for it. In regards to a village raising a child, I think that is something that could still very much apply, and especially in an area on the Cape Flats. And I'm a product of that, where I was everybody's child. We had a slogan that was very prevalent back in the day: "My child is your child." And so often, if one of the neighbors called us to go to the shop or to do something, it's not even as we had a choice. We knew we had to do it. But they all took responsibility for raising the children in the street, because they were all friends. There was a sense of community, and it was tough. And I think it's because of the toughness of the situation where everybody grew up, that we all, or at least the parents at that time, they pulled together, looking after each other's children. And I think if it wasn't for that aspect of community, of Ubuntu, like they call it, a lot of us would have gone by the wayside, because somebody was watching out for us. And yes, it is different to maybe to suburbia, where you have your higher walls and people are a lot more closed off. I think when you grow up in places like the Cape Flats, everybody knows everybody. And in a sense, there's a lot of security in that, knowing that somebody is always going to be on the lookout for you. And even today, we still have a sense of that, if maybe not um, in the aspects it was in the 10, 15, 20 years ago, but it's still there. But it's a vital component for a lot of youngsters today to be able to have a support structure around them. And I think in essence, that's what it is, to have a support structure. In the absence of your father not being there, I want to say this though, that I want to give a lot of praise to moms doing a fantastic job because they fulfill both roles. And I commend the moms, and I want to say to moms, well done. But this is my heart on this, that moms can only give you as much. There's certain things that will always lack where a child is concerned with regards to the love of a father. And a mom can do a lot of things, but they cannot give you what the father is supposed to give you. And I think that is something in society that we need to restore, that we need to get to a point where our fathers take up that role of loving the children, loving their wives. And I think society will look a lot more different when the father steps up and he steps into the role that is required of him, not out of obligation, but of a sense of wanting to do it, and in sense of wanting to step up and be the best dad that they can be. And I think at the end of the day, that's all we can ask of fathers, is to be the best fathers that they can be. You don't have to be the richest dad in the world. You don't have to be the most talented. I think what kids want is not the presence, but your presence. I think it's very important in the absence of not having a father to have role models, to have positive male role models, especially. And you do better when you know better. That's a Maya Angelou quote. And I think that rings true. If you don't have somebody to model things to you, you will always be floundering because there's no guidance. And in actual fact, you just need guidance. And for me, I must say, I'm being a believer. I draw a lot of strength from the Word of God that guides me. But it's also important to have physical role models that will model things to you. And you can learn a lot from other people's mistakes. Yes, you must make your own mistakes as well. But when you have a person that lifts you up to a level that you're not yet at, in actual fact, you can call it mentorship. But you do need a strong male role model in your life to be able to help you plot your own and chart your own course in life as a man. And it's always great to learn from somebody else as well. It gives you a lot of comfort that you know you're on the right track and somebody's helping you along there, especially when you have positive role models in that. But also the big benefit of having positive role models. And I'll go back to my big brother, my eldest brother, Donovan. And now he is a father in the city. He's fathering a lot of other kids, not just in the sense of talk, but physically really fathering them. He's got his own kids, but he's brought other people through, bringing out their potential. And I think that in essence is what it is. Fathers, it is their role to bring out the potential in their offspring. It is our role as fathers to affirm. It is our role as fathers to make sure that our children, they have the best ability to thrive in this world. And so when I look back at my relationship with my big brother, who was my first father figure, I think if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would be able to pay it forward, not just to my own children, but to others. And I think that the role of positive reinforcement from a role model is something that pays forward and pays dividends to others, not just in your own situation. Because once you receive something and a gift like that, I don't think you're able to keep it for yourself, because it is something that will bear fruit, and that fruit will not just be for you, it will be for your offspring, but it will be generational. And that is how we touch lives. It is how we ensure that our society becomes great. And then we have less issues in our society and less blame shifting, and there's more accountability with regards to how we look at situations and how can I be the change that I want to see in this world. So when we talk about focus for fathers in a world that um, wants to grab our attention with a lot of things, asking of our time, I think to keep a good balance as a father is something called priority. And I'm not talking about priorities because it then have order of ranks in terms of what you prioritize as one over the other. But when you have a priority, and if you say as a father that my priority is my family, first and foremost, that is something that you're going to, whatever you do centers around that. So whether you in the workplace, whether you on the sporting field, whether you in whatever industry you might find yourself, the end goal should still be that my focus and my priority is my family. And that is how your dreams are going to flow out of, Your actions will all flow towards that is what I want to do. I want to make sure that my family remains strong, the unit remains strong. So your actions that you take is based on that. So yes, you are going to find yourself in the marketplace. You're going to have a lot of things that's going to ask your time and your attention. But ultimately, when you base your decisions on anything, is what is my top priority? And if you're a father and if you're a family man, if you're a married man, then your priority should be your wife and your kids in that order. And it sounds funny. If you're a child-centered family, it might sound very, very difficult on your ears. But you first married your wife in the first place. That's your first priority. The kids, of course, they will always remain your responsibilities. But you got to look at your family first and foremost. But you look at, and children will always do this, they will look at how you love your wife first. And that determines a lot of their beliefs in how they interact with the world, is how dad loved mom. And I think if they see that as a model of how dad loved mom, it has an effect because we're modeling to them what respect should look like to others. And it will play itself out. You will see it in their own action as your own children, how they respond to people and the respect they show to them. And so coming back to that particular question of keeping focus, I think you need to be centered in yourself in terms of knowing who you are. And so when the winds change and things shift in your life, you need to be anchored in something. And so for me, I have a belief system. Somebody else might have a different thing in how they believe. So essentially, also keeping focus is to have a user respect for yourself. If you don't have that, you are going to be pulled in all directions from everybody, and you will be of no good and no use for your own family. And so self-respect plays a huge role. Always place a high premium on your own worth. If you don't have your own worth, other people's going to place worth on you. So as dads, as fathers, know your worth, because your worth translates to your family and how you approach them and how you treat them as a family. And placing worth on yourself is placing worth on your family and their dreams and desires. I think there are a lot of stereotypes about men in this world, and I think a lot of that is deserved. But I also feel that on the flip side of that is also there's also a little bit of unfairness, especially in the media with regards to how fathers are portrayed. There are lots of good fathers out there, and I think that the problem is that a lot of the fathers, and especially how it's portrayed, they've abdicated their roles as fathers. They've not taken the responsibility, and they've not been accountable as fathers. But there are good fathers out there, and I think what we need to do as those who really walk that road and talk the talk is to be good role models to other fathers that maybe need that little bit of a help and a boost and a step up to become that father. And we need to change the mindset by not just talking, but by really applying what we do talk about. And so we have a job on our hands with society changing, with what was the norm not being the norm anymore, and how we find ourselves in that space in today's life, how we define that again, but how we positively define it and impact is the challenge that we do have as fathers in today's society. And so we have a role to play, we have a lot of work to do, but I don't think it's a lost cause. I think that when you value being fathers, there will always be the case to go and make something positive of that and build other men up to be the best dads that they can be. And so, no, it's not a lost cause. I think that we just have more work to do, lots of work to do. But we can make a big difference in our communities and our society at large when we're very intentional about doing that. I think for me, as a father, maybe just speaking to other dads about getting it right with our kids is not to be too hard on yourself. For number one, I think we're all going to make mistakes, but I think that if our hearts are right, if our intentions are right towards our children, I think that's half the battle won. And I think for me, for myself, what I had to learn and still learning is to listen more, to understand better, to be more present in the lives of my kids, And so for me, my kids are now different ages, different phases of their lives. I've got a teenager now, so obviously life has changed for us as parents as well. And our approach should be different. And what I've learned is not to live vicariously through my boys. They have their own lives to live, and so I have expectations for them, um, which I think as parents we must have. But I've learned that their dreams are their own. I've learned that their vision for themselves are their own, and it's my job to nurture that. It is my job to do the best that I can to get them to live out their dreams and their aspirations. And so I've just learned to be the type of father that want to see my kids successful without being so in their face and being the one that wants to rule every aspect of their lives. We are changing a generation when you look at our kids. We are a generation ourselves. Our fathers, absent or not, they were a generation above us. So it is our job to shape another generation, and that's an awesome responsibility, but it's also a great opportunity to leave a legacy behind with your offspring, with your kids. So I'm not in the space where I always want to tell anybody else how to do it, because I do believe that you need to respect that area where dads are concerned and other fathers. But I would then advise that we, we must love our children. And especially when it comes to our boys, love them. Boys have a thing about wanting to be affirmed, our daughters as well. But as dads, if we can speak positively into the lives of our children, let's always do that. Let's always affirm. Let's always be the ones to say I love you, and not just in words, but also to show it in our body language by giving those hugs. They love that, and I think it's reciprocal. We love having them say that back to us, and so to love and to be loved back in return, it's the best thing. So to dads, keep on loving, love on your wives, showcase to your children how it should be, but love on your children as well, and enjoy the time when we have with them. I think that's the best aspect of being a dad. Is to be called a dad. I think for me that's one of my favorite parts. There's just a special thing about being called dad, and may that experience be the same for you, not just in the now, but for later in life when it becomes so much sweeter, when time becomes less. So treasure the time with they have with your children, and always appreciate them, always love them on them, and always love the experience of being a dad. One of the lessons I've learned recently was with my teenage son, and my son is at the age where he wants to express himself. And I think, and I mentioned it earlier with regards to how we approach them in their different phases of their lives, is to have respect for them. And it was a hard lesson for me to learn just the other day, is when he will tell you the hard truths about what he experiences. And maybe you may think that you're doing the best job and greatest job, but when they tell you what they think and how they feel, it is a time that you need to take action, and you need to speak into that which is vulnerable in their lives. So when my son tells me, Dad, I want more of you, instead of when we're thinking the opposite, when they become teenagers, maybe they want less of you. When they say to you, Dad, but I actually want to spend more time with you. And it's a critical phase of their lives where even their sexuality, their identity, their view on the world begins to be shaped in a more permanent way and fashion. It is really the time then to be present. So I've learned in this last week or so, that is the requirement for me. They don't want less, they want more of us. And they want to be in their presence. And especially when you are their role model and they look up to you, it is time to not ship out, but to ship in and to show up. That's what they want, to always show up, listen to them, be intentional about them, but give more of yourself to them in that period where it is so critical, because before they get into the age where their minds are made up, be the one to help them to get to the stage where they are solid in their foundation. And if they want more of you, give them more of you. Yeah, I think the respect it's a huge thing. I think maybe I didn't mention that, but I think the respect, especially for a teenage boy, is huge. It's a big thing. And so for fathers, I think that we need to pay them the respect, because we're not raising boys to stay boys. We're raising boys to become men, and we want them to be upstanding men. And respect works both ways. So when we want respect, we need to give respect back to them. I forgot to tell you this thing, and maybe this is an important aspect of that balance. The one thing that men struggle with, a lot of men, is to make decisions, to make the hard decisions. And that is one of the reasons why we struggle to focus, struggle to give direction, is that we don't often take accountability for decisions. And I'll make a simple example of a household with a teenage daughter. And so the teenage daughter would come and would go out or want to go out of the house, not dressed appropriately. And the first thing the dad should say, you won't leave the house like this is not respectful. But what we do is, if she asks, Dad, can I go out? We abdicate, we leave the decision to mom, and we say, go ask your mom. And I think we need to get to the stage where even little decisions like that is something that impacts on us when we don't do it. And it's all about decision making for men, and especially for fathers as well. And we need to take responsibility for those decisions. We need to be accountable, learn to make the hard decisions. And when you do that, you're not just only doing it for yourself, but you're also modeling to your children to be able to, in life, when they face those decisions, to make the hard ones. And it's always important to be accountable for those ones. Don't sweep it under the carpet. Don't be an ostrich with your head in the sand. Face the realities and make those decisions. You'll be glad you did, because if you don't, you're still going to have to face it. It doesn't go away, and it becomes back worse. It becomes worse to you if you don't do it. So my advice, always take the hard decisions. If you have to consult, if you believe, a pray about it. But most importantly, men, I want to say this: you are married. You're married to a wife. You can't make 50% decisions. Consult your wife on this. Make 100% decision. You will be glad you did. Then you can thank me later. So that's it.